Hello chess friends and welcome to the of Chess channel and welcome to a very special match game that's going on now these days. It's Stockfish 12 or this Stockfish NNUE version against Stockfish Classic or this Stockfish 11 version, and this match game is really incredible. Of course, Stockfish 12 is brutalizing Stockfish 11. That's not the point, but it's really a battle of styles because this Stockfish 11 or previous Stockfish versions were simply brutal force style. This Stockfish NNUE has this, of course, updatable neural network, and that's why it performs so good. It is such a great engine, and it plays also great positional games. I've mentioned that also in my previous analyzed games, also in the super final between Stockfish NNUE and Lila C0, that Stockfish can perform now basically in every position. Stockfish can play the positional game. Stockfish can, of course, this NNE version can play also the tactical game, can get out also of bad openings with some great tactics. So that's why it's really incredible. It's basically unbeatable, and it shows also, of course, the great skills in the TCEC Season 19 Super Final, in which it really crushed this other engine, Lila C0. So today I decided to show you a great game between Stockfish 12 and Stockfish 11 in the Dutch defense, and this game, I think the style will be really shown well, I think, because it will show the positional skills of Stockfish NNUE. And that's, I think, this component that really Stockfish missed in the previous versions. That's why it is, as I said, so great. So let's check out now the game. As usual, we say round one and fight. So d4 played by Stockfish NNUE here with the white pieces. If you want to know the current results, you can follow also the TCEC official site. I will show you, of course, the link in the description below, so you can maybe watch the games live. They're played all on this particular moment as I'm recording this video, so you can see really many great games, and also maybe search for yourself some good games if you have troubles maybe in particular opening. So d4 f5, the Dutch defense, and most of the times Stockfish played really brutal force attacks against Dutch defenses, but now you see now this really great change of the style of Stockfish NNUE, in which Stockfish will play here a great positional game. It's really like an engine Karpov sort of playing here. We have to move f5, we have bishop to g5, and the idea behind this bishop to g5, the idea, it's the so-called Hopton attack, is to weaken a little bit our opponent's pawn structure. There is always this tactic, this wasn't played in the game, but I wanted to show you also this great tactic that can happen: h6, h4, bishop to h4, g5, and now after bishop to g3, f4 can be played, and now comes really this tactical line of the Hopton attack. You can play e3 because you're threatening also to play the move queen to h5. So if your opponent takes the bishop, you have queen to h5, the checkmate. That's just for some learning this tactical idea of this Hopton attack. But okay, bishop to g5, as I said, the clear goal is to weaken a little bit further your opponent's pawn structure with potential h6 move, maybe even g5. Then you can move the bishop, but your opponent has exposed himself a little bit too far, makes too much progress in front of the king, because most of the times in the Dutch defense, black wants to castle on the king side and simply play on this common idea, knight to f6 and knight to e4 outpost. But when you weaken the pawn structure in front of the kings too much, it can be a problem. That's why I really love this Hopton attack. Among many attacks, I really like to play this Hopton attack, and also I like to play the common positional Dutch with great positional counterplay ideas. But this Hopton attack, maybe you can learn if you have troubles to play against the Dutch. So we have g6, knight to c3, bishop to g7, and now knight to f3. When you can notice that this setup of whites is really basically a good developing idea. The knights are on natural squares, the bishop on g5 is very active. Still we have opportunities to play e3 and also develop this light square bishop on a good square. We have h6 and now bishop to d2, d5. So okay, what to say about this move? This d5 is, of course, the great idea of blacks to cement the knight on e4 with potential knight to f6, knight to e4 moves. But always in the Dutch defense, the pawn structure gets suddenly static, and that's why I really love now the next couple of moves by Stockfish NNUE, in which Stockfish plays really a great positional trades of pieces. So here Stockfish plays the move e3, and the idea is to wait this knight to come out, because first of all, what we should notice, the weak square in black's position is, of course, the e5 square, because you have advanced your f5 pawn, you have advanced your d5 pawn. So a potential knight outpost on e5 can never be kicked away by a pawn. So that's why you have to get rid of any minor piece that are protecting this e5. So that's why here after the move knight to c6 comes bishop to b5. We're simply battling for the e5 square. That's really the new Stockfish style, the new positional style. In many games we have seen some h3 g4 lines, tactical lines, trying to open lines. Ideas by Stockfish, this brutal forced engine, but now this NNUE really plays this great positional battles. Bishop to b5, a simple idea to get our knight on e5. So queen to d6, we have a knight to e2. This knight to e2 is also a great maneuver with potential ideas. Knight to f4, knight to d3, and again, of course, knight to e5. So that's the whole battle, and we're preventing also the queen to come on a very active square on b4. So a6, bishop takes c6. If b takes c6 happens, then I think knight to f4 can happen. And the problem is you cannot play the move c5 because you get d takes c5 and the queen is deflected from the defense of the pawn on g6. If you try to play something like g5 here, then again knight to d3 and again knight to e5, and you cannot kick this knight from e5 away. You have to give up basically your good bishop on g7 for that knight, then still we can recapture with another knight and still would have a great control of the e5 score. So after bishop to c6, queen to c6 was played, and now h4. The idea is again to split the pawn structure here because we want to weaken. As I said, still we have opportunities to castle even the king side because our king is not dangerous. Still we have a good control of the center. So bishop to e6 here. Knight to f4. If you play knight to f6 here immediately, then knight to e5 comes. That's, I think, the main issue here in black setup. Then your g6 pawn is hanging, so you have to make many bishop moves in order to protect first your g6 weakness. We have knight to f4, bishop to f7, and now here comes the move a4. Sometimes in chess it's bad to play this setup, to play on both flanks, sort of, because you keep a little bit your center vulnerable. But I hope you realize that the center is great here for white because white has a dominant position in the center. So that's why flank attacks on both sides are possible. Not that these are flank attacks, these are also prophylactic moves here by white. We are preventing also some b5 pawn breakthroughs, but also some g5 pawn breakthroughs. So we're keeping the queen side and the king side really blocked, and still we have a great blockade of the center with knight to d3, as I said, the great control of the e5 score. So basically black is really pushed away here. Black cannot find good squares on the board. Still, of course, you have opportunities to play knight to f6, knight to e4, the common Dutch defense idea, but still, you see, we haven't played with our f-pawn. Still, this knight can be kicked away with a potential f3 move. So if the knight comes on e4, we still can kick it away with f3. So that's why I think black is already bad here, although in the Dutch you can really play on these outpost ideas with some pawn breakthrough motifs, but here, as I said, the Stockfish plays really great positional games. Here Stockfish Classic or the Stockfish 11 plays here a5. We have knight to d3 and now queen to a6, knight to c5. You see, we're occupying really the weak square in black's position. It's of course c5 and e5, queen to b6, and now rook to a3. If you take the pawn on b2, it's basically game over. You got the poisoned pawn because rook to b3 will happen. You can maybe queen to a1, but now bishop to c1 is really locking here the queen. And after something like b6, you can again attack the queen. And if the queen escapes, now knight to b3 locks really the queen. And now we can play rook to a1 and trap the queen. The queen is trapped here, and it's basically game over here for white. So pardon me, for black. So after rook to a3, you see we have this idea to play rook to b3 and also attack this b7 weakness in the game. Queen to a7 was played, and now a very important move, queen to e2. The cool part of this Stockfish setup is that we don't have the light square bishop, which is really incredible, but it's black that has the light square problems in the game, because if you try to kick away this very annoying knight from c5, you get queen to b5 and you get probably some troubles here around the square d7. So that's why c6 has to be played. You see, with the bishop, with the light square bishop on the board, it's black that has the troubles on light squares. Really incredible positional game here by Stockfish NNUE. And now comes again this idea, knight to d3, again with preparations to play knight to e5, knight to f6. Okay, b4. It is a good choice here by Stockfish NNUE to open the position, because Black has played many moves with the queen, didn't really improve the position of the queen, still has an endangered king a little bit in the center, hasn't made progress with the bishops. The bishops are blocked out, first of all, by this knight and also by this pawn on d4. This bishop is bad anyway, it's blocked out by the pawn on d5 and the pawn on g6. So your b6 played by Stockfish Classic, and now Stockfish NNUE takes b takes a5. So b takes a5, we have castling. It's a perfect idea because we don't have troubles. Still g5 is very risky, you cannot make progress here, and the king cannot stay in the center through the whole game. So that's why castling also played by Stockfish Classic, and now we have rook to b3. Of course, getting use of the only open file on the board, we have rook to b8, and now again knight to e5. It's basically incredible that black cannot do anything about this knight to e5. It's simply such a weak square in black's position. It happens many times really in Dutch defense games, especially in this stonewall setups that black is building. Bishop to e8, we have rook to b3, and now after rook takes b3, we have c takes b3, queen to c7, and now rook to c1, of course, targeting again a new weakness in black's position. It's of course the weak pawn. There are basically two weaknesses that you can always face in your opponent's position. It's of course the weak square and the weak pawn, and I think black has many weaknesses, as I said. The weak e5, the weak c5 square, the weak pawn on c6. Also, this a5 could be a problem. So in the game, queen to b6, at least some kind of a counterattack here played by Stockfish 11, and now queen to d1. We have a knight to e4, bishop to e1, and as I said here, after knight to d6, we have now this move f3. This is now our flexibility, because that's the problem when you push your pawns too far. Sometimes you leave also some spaces behind, like the square on e5 here. With the move f3, we have now restricted really all of the possible outposts of the knight on our side of the board. So basically, black can never jump with the knight on a very active square. This knight is also out of game. The bishop is out of game. If you trade here, for instance, the bishop for this knight on e5, still you haven't improved your position, because this knight will come into the game. Again, this bishop is bad, and at least we have a great activity with the bishops, which is aiming, of course, on both sides. So after the move f3, it's really such a boa constrictor game here by Stockfish NNUE. Really, this restriction idea. Black cannot really find good squares on the board. Bishop to f6, and now bishop to g3, queen to a6, and now again on a weak square c5. It's really easy to find now the best next move for Stockfish NNUE. As I said, this is simply a different style than this old version, this 11. So queen to a6, knight to d3, we have knight to b7, queen to e1, knight takes c5. Okay, you get rid at least one of this knight, but still this knight is again very powerful. Queen to d8, rook to b1, and now e5. Stockfish 11 was probably annoyed by this too good setup here by white. Try to sacrifice the pawn for some kind of a counterplay. It's a desperate try. We'll give that. That was pathetic. This Mortal Kombat sound. It's okay. It's of course a liberating line. It's a liberating idea. But basically, what white does is of course takes the pawn. We have bishop to e7, and now knight to b7. Very nice move with the tempo, and now this knight comes on a very active square. So you see how Stockfish NNUE makes progress. First, it of course attacked the 4th rank, then we occupied the 5th rank on the board, and now we are occupying the 6th rank. It's like moving in an elevator higher and higher. Now we have occupied the 6th rank, and now probably our goal is to occupy even the 7th rank. Great position game. So queen to b4, you can even take, if you like, a takes b4. It's also a great line here for white, because we have now another great element. It's of course the supported pass pawn, and in the end games you can really create this idea when you have the supported pass pawn. Black has really troubles to defend this. But okay, here Stockfish NNUE plays a more active move, which is now the other component of Stockfish. Great positional games, but also great activity games. Queen to c1, we have queen to b6, and now h5. Very important move to split the pawn structure. If you try now to take bishop takes d6, it's not a problem. For instance, if you try to pass through, but now queen to c3 will happen, and see your holes here in the position. You gave up basically your best piece on the board, the dark square bishop, which is the key defender in front of the king. So now the queen will come into the game. You will have some troubles Still, we can even move the king here, I think, to f2 or bishop to f2 to compete maybe with the queen here on this diagonal, but queen to f6 is, I think, the serious threat that black cannot prevent anymore. So after h5, g takes h5, but now knight to f5, we want to grab this pawn, bishop to f8, and now king to h2 was played here, queen to d8, and now queen to c2, queen to d7, but now bishop to h4. So the pieces are getting more and more active. These bishops, I've never seen such a bad bishop pair in my life. These bishops are really out of game. They're simply too bad. c5, okay, rook to g1. We have now opportunities also to open the g file. Rook to a6, and now bishop to f6. Great move, cementing the bishop on a very, very active square. Queen to f7, and now queen to d3, attacking, of course, the d5 weakness. Rook takes f6. Really a desperate try again by Stockfish 11 to get rid of this very, very annoying bishop, but you have to sacrifice the rook for the exchange. After e takes f6, queen to f6, and now queen to d5, bishop to f7, okay, queen to e4, protecting everything, and now bishop to e6. If you try bishop to g6 to pin, it's not a problem. Still, we can play queen to c4, followed with queen to d3, and maybe even d5, pardon me, e4 here, cementing the knight. So it's, I think, not a problem. So in the game, after the move queen to e4, Stockfish 11 tries a bishop to e6, but now knight to h4. We have bishop to f7, rook to b1, queen to e6, and now finally trading off the queen, simplifying the position. We are up the exchange. We want to simplify the game, go into an endgame. We have two extra pawns here, two connected pass pawns, and it's simply too much to handle. Here in the game, e4 was played. We have c4, b takes c4, bishop takes c4, knight to f5, very nice square for the knight, bishop to b4, and now knight to e3, bishop to d3, rook to d1, bishop to e2, and now getting now rook on the most active rank here, on the 7th rank, cutting off the king's potential king's activity. Bishop to c3, now f4, h4, e5, bishop to h5, here e6, bishop to d2. It was also a desperate try. We can even take out the bishop, but it's not a problem. Here, knight to d5, king to f8, rook to h7, bishop to c3, and in this position, Stockfish 11 resigned, so we'll give that, of course, fatality. You can take the knight, but it's a lost game anyway. This pass pawn is, again, simply too much to handle. So Stockfish 12 won the game against Stockfish 11. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game, but I hope also that you realize now the change of style by Stockfish NNUE. Great performance, simply playing around this weak e5 square, targeting a new weak square, c5, targeting a new weakness, the weak pawn on c6, then splitting the pawns, trying to open the positions when we feel that our opponent doesn't have good activities with his minor pieces in a good position, simplifying the position, trading off more pieces, getting our pass pawn through, and win the game like this. So I hope you enjoyed this game. Maybe it wasn't really the brutal forced attack like we used to see by Stockfish 11 or the previous Stockfish versions, but I think this is a more human style of playing that we can, I think, hang on to, and maybe even try to repeat at least some of these ideas by Stockfish NNUE. For me, it was really an incredible game against also such a strong opponent like Stockfish 11, and I think we'll have some fun by following this Stockfish NNUE. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Meanwhile, you can watch my other commented chess games played by engines. Here's the link, and if you want to see the best chess games by humans, check out my best chess games of all time series. And if you like my content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.